CatDV. TV for the cat.
Okay, well, welcome to our webinar again this week. And once again, thank you for deciding to spend your time with us. We are very grateful, and we know that your time is valuable when there are so many events such as this available for you to spend your time on in your week. So this week, we're looking at distributed and multi-site workflows. I'm joined, as Hannah said, by Matthew.
Hello.
So we've got some, I think we've probably finally arrived on the internet because we have lots of cat pictures. And of course, that's what you have to have when doing anything internet related, as far as I'm led to believe. So let's go straight into the topic. This is a MasterCat diagram. So what is MasterCat? Well, what we can see here is we have 6 local CatDV installations feeding into one central CatDV system, and that's what we call a MasterCat system. So being able to have a distributed CatDV deployment, this one's got 6 in it, our largest one's got about 30, all feeding into a central CatDV system. You'll see that each of these CatDVs is an independent system in its own right. So we've got our CatDV server, we've got a worker, little purple gear, and then the icons below are meant to show storage, and we've got some SAN or NAS stuff, some LTO, and some cloud going on there. So each of those independent CatDV systems has its own storage and can run independently with its own workflows if it wants to. Why would we want to do this kind of stuff? Well, collaboration is the obvious answer, I guess. So this is a widely used workflow amongst our news clients, where we might have local stations that are sharing a subset of the content from their local station with the group. And that means that reuse can be encouraged across the various teams, and the teams can run independently. Their networks don't have to be connected really well all the time. But at the same time, they're sharing content with the company as a whole, which can save a whole lot of time, money, and be very efficient in terms of news making. So that's what MasterCat is. It's a roll-up of the data and metadata from local CatDV systems. But of course, metadata is not everything, although in our world it kind of is. But being able to access content is pretty important too, which is why we have the storage being shown in this picture too. So our MasterCat workflows that we'll look at later include not just the movement of metadata between these various systems, but the movement of media. And that can be proxy media, or it can be high-res media. Cool. So we've taken a look at the big central system there, as well as the 6 spoke systems around the edge that are feeding it. That's MasterCat and its supplying systems. The one out on the right is a bit different. That is intended to represent a secure CatDV system that's hosted on the web. And I guess let's just jump straight into the naming that we started to use for these things, right? So during development of these concepts, we needed a way of being able to communicate amongst ourselves what these various systems' purposes were, and so we started calling them by some cool names, right? So you know CatDV, we've had that as a name for 18 years, and we invented this around the COVID time, this CatTV series of programs that we do weekly. And things have kind of gone a little bit out of hand. One of our customers, valued customer, invented the MasterCat name, so we're very grateful to them. But then it's taken on a bit of a life of its own. So MasterCat, there's the one in the middle. It's the big cat, obviously. Around the edge, we're calling these house cats. These are house installations. So in your home CatDV environment, we call those house cats. And it's just a nice, easy way to remember what they do. And the secure CatDV system that's intended for deployment on the internet, where all the connections are initiated from a CatDV system that is in a secure environment, rather than being initiated from the internet, and therefore giving us an extra layer of security, we're calling that Alley Cat, because that CatDV system can be out there and it can be being attacked, and it offers another layer of protection for all of your valuable assets that are being managed by CatDV, either in HouseCat or MasterCat systems. So I guess we try and do a joke every time we do one of these, don't we? That's the joke this week. MasterCat, HouseCat, and Alley Cat. Those are our little names. Okay, so let's move on to what a MasterCat workflow looks like. So in actual fact, what's doing all the work in this case is the HouseCat. So the HouseCat system has a set of worker actions that we've written using our APIs, which we talked about some weeks ago. So we're eating our own cat food, if you like. And this set of worker actions notices a change in the HouseCat system, maybe with a policy. So, okay, something's changed, and we're looking for assets that perhaps have got a status of approved or status of share this with the rest of the company. And then the worker leaps into action and it updates MasterCat. So what the HouseCat worker is actually doing with its job is logging in to the MasterCat system, sending the metadata, and that might be new metadata or updated metadata if it's already sent it. And that metadata could include a cloud URL. So if we've archived from HouseCat to a cloud storage platform, then we can send that cloud URL as well as the credentials potentially to the MasterCat system, so that content can be immediately accessed from MasterCat as well as HouseCat. It's pretty cool. But for those folks that aren't using cloud storage, we can optionally choose to send proxy media. So the content can play on MasterCat as well as on HouseCat. And we can send master material too. So we don't do that with complex media, so image sequences, red, ARRI, and such like, but we do it with anything that I'm calling atomic. Single file equals single master, so MXF and ProRes and all of that's pretty cool. So HouseCat's actually doing all the work to make the MasterCat system work, and we've tried to make it, as we have done with a few of our workflows in the last few years, really straightforward. And so what I'm going to do now is hand over to Matthew to actually show us that workflow happening in action. So Matthew,
right, thanks, Dave.
Jerry, over to you.
Thank you, Dave. I was just thinking, every time we do one of these webinars, my hair gets longer. So if they don't open the barbers soon, then I'm going to look like Cousin It from the Addams Family soon. So here we go with the demo. So I've tried to make this sort of fairly simplistic, just so those people who are relatively new to CatDV can see how this is working. And what I've effectively got is I've got my two systems here. So Dave talked about having many systems. In this demo, I've just got two systems. So on the left, I've got my London CatDV system, and on the right, I've got my New York CatDV system. And I've used the sort of dark and light themes just to help differentiate between the two systems. So in this instance, London is going to be the sort of house cat, and that's going to contribute in to the system in New York. So on the right, you can see New York's got a number of production groups. We've got a production group called London, and we've got a production group called New York. So, New York can have its own content and projects in the system. And London have also got their own content. There's, as I said, it's a simple example. It's split into two catalogs. So they've got a catalog called Local Only, and they've got a catalog called Shared. And basically what's going to happen is, using the policies that I've set up, which we'll look at in a bit, effectively any content that goes into that shared catalog will also be sent over to New York. So, if I look in this catalog, you can see I've got some clips here. You can see that both the high res files and the proxy files are online. That's what those green lights are showing me. If I look in New York, you'll see at the moment that shared catalog is empty. So this is kind of just the initial state. Normally these would be synchronizing as we go, but I just wanted to show you what that would look like, when you first set this up. So in order to simulate a change and get this replication to happen, what I need to do is edit these clips. So I'm just going to edit all of these clips, and what am I going to do? I'm going to change the review status. So I'm going to change them all ready for approval, and save that. So that will effectively update all of those clips. And because they've been updated, effectively that will now set a new flag that's been introduced in server 9. And that flag is telling me that the clips have been updated. And you can see what the system is doing now is it's sent all of these clips over to the New York system. And effectively at the moment, it's actually uploading the proxies and the high res media as well. So they're being transmitted to the other system. And you can see you get statuses on both sides, both in London and New York, showing you the transfer of that content. So just by, updating a field in London, that's then pushed effectively all of the content to that shared catalog in New York as well. And as I say, it's uploading the proxy and the high res files for you. So you'll see that these are all coming through. So this was a still called Swimmer. and this one here is effectively a video file. You see, it's already got a playable proxy in the web interface, so that has basically been uploaded using this system that we've got here. So if I just refresh, you'll see now the traffic light status is showing me that the high res and the proxy media is also now available on the system in New York. And as Dave said, you can choose to just send the clip information, or you can send the high res, or you can send the proxy, and you can choose which of those you actually want to send. So in this case, we've now got a copy sat in London, and we've also got a copy sat in New York. Now, this is a one-way push. So if I make a change to a clip like this swimmer clip here, and I'm now going to say that clip is approved, again, that flag will be reset now to show that clip has been updated, and you'll see in New York the approval status of that clip's updated as well. So any changes that you make to user metadata, things like I could change the star rating of this clip, so I could go and change that to be a 1-star clip, and again, that should get propagated across to New York when it picks up the replication. You can see there that it's got a 1-star there. So that's one workflow. And as Dave said, as well as London, I could have Hong Kong, and I could have Paris, and I could have all of these other CatDV systems contributing in to the New York system. Or rather than it being a specific office, that could be a central system. So it doesn't have to be a sort of site specific. It could be a centralized system.
Yeah, that's right. We've and Matthew, as you know, we've deployed CatDV in 3 sites currently to an international bank, and they wanted each of their sites in Hong Kong, New York, and London to have a separate CatDV system, to have some shared content between all 3, and have some private content that's just local to those 3 installations. And so they don't actually have a master cat. They've just essentially got 3 house cats that just talk directly to each other. So that's another deployment that is equally useful. And you made an interesting point there, actually, Matthew. You said it's a one-way sync at the moment, and I know that the build team are doing some cool stuff to extend that. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? So, and I'm jumping ahead a little in that this code is in closed beta at the moment. It's working, and we have it deployed in a few locations, but we are actively seeking folks who want to do more with it, and that's going to be a big request we'll make again at the end. But if you can talk about some of the things that we're doing that haven't yet made it into the beta, but will be coming soon, that would be quite handy.
Yeah, so at the moment I've got this sort of structure here where I've got my production group. So I've got London, and then in the New York system I've also got a production group called London. We kind of recognize that some people might want to have a mapping between production groups and systems. So that's something that we're looking into, because in London you might want the production group to be called local, for example, but over in New York you might want the production group to be called London, so you can kind of differentiate. So at the moment the logic kind of requires that these sit in the same place. The other thing that we do is when we upload the media, we're using the media stores to actually find a suitable path to save that media into onto the local system. But another potential workflow, and one I wanted to show you, was a different way of architecting this was to have both of these systems sharing some common storage, and the logical place to have that common storage, I guess, is in the cloud, because that's accessible, from both sites without too much, setup. So what I've got here is I've got in the London system, I've got another production group called Cloud, and in that I've got a catalog called Backblaze, and the content in this catalog is basically being pulled or synchronized automatically from that bucket that I've got in my object storage. And in New York, I've got the same catalog. And it's important to note that London is synchronizing to New York in this situation, because London is the one that's generating the proxies. I'm actually putting my proxies back up into the cloud as well. They're not on local storage. But here, I only need to send the metadata for the clip. So I don't actually need to send the media, because both systems are accessing those same buckets. So when I look at one of these clips here, you'll see that basically the media path and the proxy path here for this leopard clip is actually telling me it's in a remote volume. This square bracket notation is what we use to. And
I think that's worth calling out a bit, because we've got a playable proxy here. But if you recall back on the other system, our little online indicators are showing that content is being offline. So what's going on here is we're playing the proxy file from B2 in this case. But of course, our online status, which is showing the online status of the file system, not the object system, if you like, is showing that content's offline, but we can still play that content fine and access it using its object URL.
That's right, and the logic is here is different. So, if I take this clip here, smoke logo, and I, set it as ready for approval, and I give it a star rating and save that clip, that information is going to be sent over to the system in New York. But there's no media transfer happening here. It's just passing the metadata. So effectively, they're both accessing the proxy from that Backblaze bucket and that sort of shared location. So is it worth me just showing a little bit on how that logic works for people who may be already familiar with the worker? So
absolutely, yes.
So let me do that. Let me just get my configuration up for my worker. So let me bring this onto the screen. So I've got two replication actions here. So this first one is a server query, and you can see there's a couple of parameters in this server query, and basically it's looking for a catalog called shared. So this is the logic that I'm implying to say only synchronize that catalog from London rather than all the catalogs in London. I'm just saying catalog equals shared. Obviously you can build this logic in different ways, and then this clip updated field is this special magic field, if you like, that gets set to the value updated every time this clip is changed. So this is how I can detect that there's been a change to that clip in the London system and trigger my worker action. And finally, I'm looking for a status of import complete. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I don't want to start sending information until the proxy and the analysis has been done on the clip. So I want to make sure that's been completed first. And it's quite a simple worker action. Some of these can be very, very complex, but effectively this has a send to action. So effectively I tell it the URL of the remote server. So in my case, I'm running both of these on my local machine in containers, and I give it some credentials to authenticate against, and then I say whether to send the original media or the proxy media. So I can kind of check or uncheck those depending on what I want to do. And then finally, I just need to reset that clip updated field. And I've actually decided to set it to a value, sent to system 2 with a timestamp, but you could just clear it to an empty field or something like that. And that's how that particular action works. If we look at the other one, which was for the cloud production group, you'll see that here I'm looking for any clip that has that updated flag that's been set, and also a status of cloud ingest complete, because I know that will give me uniqueness for those clips that are in there. And it's exactly the same, just I haven't checked these options to send to the remote server the original media or the proxy media. Just to show you, oh, sorry, go on, Dave. Yeah.
There's a few points that are worth bringing out there. So I mentioned earlier, we spent a lot of time over the last years trying to make CatDV more powerful but simpler at the same time. So there are plenty of products that are super simple, but they don't do very much. Really easy to make a product that doesn't do much simple. There are plenty of products that are out there that are massively complicated, and they're very difficult to set up, and they need lots of developer support to do anything with them. CatDV tries to walk this path where we make it simple but powerful at the same time. And so if looking at this this worker job here, we have a single action sent to CatDV server with a few options which are fairly self-explanatory, and then those workflows just go off and behind the scenes handle a whole pile of additional complexity. So I think that's quite important. Plus, if you could go back to the other server query, or the server query that had the clip updated field in it, could you talk a bit about what the clip updated field does? Because even outside of Mastercat workflows, that is, you called it a magic field, and it kind of is. Could you explain what it does?
Yeah, sure. So this is a new type that we've added in Server 9, and just to show you how this looks in the sort of administrative interface. So, if I go to my field configuration, I've got a field group here called replication. These are just ways of organizing my metadata fields. And here I've got that field. It has a name of clip updated, and it's got a programmatic identifier. And this clip field is of type clip updated flag. And this is something that people will get. Existing CatDV users, if they upgrade, they will get access to this functionality. It works well with the Mastercat workflows, but you could also use it for other things. So it's something that you can query in the worker. So you set the field type to clip updated flag, and then you tell it the value that you want to set into that field when that clip is updated, and the server behind the scenes will just set that flag every time the clip is updated. Now, you could have multiple of these. I've just got a very simple case because I've just copying from one system to another. But actually, if London was actually copying data to, Paris and New York and somewhere else, then I could have a couple of these different fields saying, clip updated sent to New York, or sent, you could have a set of those fields and do different worker actions. Or you could use it for a different workflow. I mean, it's a bit of a silly example, but say you wanted to export a file every time a clip was updated. Seems a bit nuts, but you could build that sort of, action in the worker effectively using this new clip updated field. So yeah, there's a lot of power there with that magic type, as I call it.
That's really cool. So, I'm super pleased with what our founder, CTO Rolf, and chief architect John were able to do to make something so powerful, so accessible and simple. Because once you can see all the things we can do with that immediately, then it opens up a whole pile of new workflows with CatDV. So very cool. So thank you, Matthew. I think that's about it on the demo side. Is that right?
It is, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so let me go back and share my screen once again. So what I'm going to do then is, that was a MasterCat workflow where we're taking content from one system and moving it to another. One of the things we are working on behind the scenes as well is the two-way update, so that metadata can be updated at both ends. That's working well in the labs at the moment. We're just refining the rules to say, well, what happens? Do we just overwrite if someone makes a change to both sides at the same time? Do we keep some kind of record about what's changed so that those conflicts can be managed manually, or how do we merge things together? All of that stuff is being worked on as we speak. So, okay, at the moment it's a push, but we want it to be a two-way synchronization soon, by the time we launch. Okay, so then let's talk about AliCat workflows. So I mentioned at the beginning, we've got our nice CatDV system. Let's imagine that you have some amazing content, enormously valuable, maybe you're a studio or a network, and you've got your property in CatDV, and CatDV is managing all of the masters for your valuable programming, maybe even before it's ever been shown. Clearly, security is a big deal. How might you want to, but at the same time, people want to collaborate. So how might you deploy a CatDV system to enable people to collaborate without exposing your core CatDV system, in this case, a house cat system, to undue risk? And so that's where AliCat comes in. And so the kind of workflows that an AliCat solution can deliver are to share links. We have a large book publishing deployment using CatDV out of New York, and we want to be able to share videos with authors and their publicity teams outside of the organization pre-launch. So again, massively secure. And so being able to share the link from CatDV to a separate CatDV server without sharing or exposing any of the masters or in-work assets or any of the metadata and comments that have gone on to do with the review and approve on the internal systems. Just share a link to a playable file that can then be expired in a few days' time to that author. Then sharing that link is a really cool AliCat workflow. We can also share a subset of the media. So let's imagine we just want to show approved assets for a particular customer. Then that can go to an AliCat, and you can have an AliCat that was dedicated to that customer so that nobody else could log into it, if you like. And when you're sharing a subset of the media, you might want to put a different watermark on it. So being able to create new proxies and send those up and not share the masters, that's probably quite a good idea. And so protecting masters, not sending masters up, that's pretty important. Review and approve, clearly being able to get that content outside of the organization. Great. But it can also work the other way, right? So we can harvest content. People can upload their content, user-generated content, if you like, into our AliCat system as a web uploader. And we can put some additional security stuff around there with our worker. We can run out anti-malware stuff on it, put it into a quarantine place before deciding to bring that media into the secure environment back at the HouseCat end. So quite a lot of things that people can do with these AliCat workflows. I guess that's again part of the reason for running this webinar, is to get folks talking with us so that we can understand new things that we could do with it before we get it launched and out of our beta program. So how does the AliCat workflow work? Well, there's a few ways actually. So this is one that's just a set of worker jobs, which is very similar actually to what the first step is very similar to what we do with a MasterCat workflow, where we notice a change with a policy, we send the metadata, cloud URL, proxy masters. But then importantly, this HouseCat is actually doing all the work again. And what this HouseCat is doing is, from its own CatDV system, every so often it's going out and asking the AliCat, have you got anything else going on? And that's really, really significant, because it means that all the connections for doing this workflow are starting inside your secure network with your HouseCat system, and nothing is being initiated by the AliCat system. And that means that even if that was compromised and people did manage to hack into it, then you can't send any jobs or any work through into your HouseCat system and somehow compromise your CatDV thing there. So it's a nice other layer of security for folks who are very concerned about protecting their media assets, and who wouldn't be. And so that's a pretty cool workflow. And there are some other ways. There's a server plugin that can do the shared links. But the AliCat workflows are pretty dashed cool. Okay, so those really are the main pieces of content. So I guess it only really then remains to see, well, to say, well, what comes next? So how do people get started with MasterCat workflows, HouseCat workflows, and AliCat workflows? Well, talk to us is the answer. So we are in a closed beta program. If you would like to have access to the code, you can see it's been running. It's deployed in a few places for a few specific requirements. We want to get some more testing done ourselves, and we'd like to hear more from our customers that could have these needs. So please do contact us. There will be another You Can Book Me link, so you can talk to one of the team next week, and some meeting slots we'll make available, so you can just book up at a time that's convenient to you. And the link I'll show in a second. And it'll be on the recording when that goes out in the next day or so. So do talk to us. It's a closed beta program, but if you're interested in it, then talk to us. And we haven't said no to anybody yet, so do reach out. It is worth noting that because we want to be able to manage these multiple systems, then with the additional administration and remote administration that we get with our Pegasus servers and workers, then we do need HouseCat and MasterCat. HouseCat and MasterCat need to be Pegasus servers and workers. For the AliCat, we don't need those to be Pegasus servers and workers, although it can offer some advantages for monitoring. But yeah, so talk to us, I guess, is the message. So there's our You Can Book Me link, catdv-master-cat.youcanbook.me. And there'll be some slots available next week in your favorite time zone to be able to talk with one of the team, or maybe even me, about all that kind of cool stuff and how those workflows and distributed CatDV workflows could work for you. Before we do Q&A, I always do a little pitch for the webinar next week. And we had a quite successful webinar a few weeks ago about an introduction to metadata with CatDV. And we're going to be running, maybe about once a month, we're going to be running some training webinars amongst our CatDV shows. And the first one next week is going to be about worker automation. And it's going to be a basic worker automation webinar. So we're going to do some ingest, MD5, proxy, maybe a bit of archiving, and a little bit of server query stuff as well. So yeah, we'll take a look at that. Do join us if you'd like to have a refresh in your worker training, particularly if you haven't seen some of the new and cool stuff that we've had in the latest versions. I think Brian's going to be joining me to help run that one. So yeah, that brings us to our Q&A. So we've tried to be fairly tight, so it's about half an hour in. Hannah, have we had any questions come through?
Yes, we have. So just a reminder that while we're running through these questions, if you have any more that you want to send in, there's a Q&A button on the bottom of your Zoom window. If you click on that, you can type them in and we'll get to those ones as well. So the first question that came in was, during Matthew's demo, he mentioned a clip updated setting. What version of CatDV is that in, and how does somebody get hold of that?
Yeah, it's in server 9, and it's a new field type, so you can just start creating them in server 9.
Yeah, so that was server 9 was what we launched at around the time of that would have been NAB, so a couple of months ago now, and anybody who's on an active maintenance contract has access to that. Anybody that isn't on an active maintenance contract, give us a call.
Great. The next one is, you mentioned storing proxies in Backblaze. Are other cloud storage companies supported as well?
Yeah, Matthew,
yes, they are. We've already got the connector for S3 buckets and Backblaze. We're looking to write others kind of based on demand as well. So yeah, if you've got a specific requirement to store either your high-res or your proxies, or ingest from a particular type of bucket, then let us know and we can look into that.
Yeah, and when we talk about S3, of course, then that can apply to anything that is S3 friendly. So there's quite a pile now of storage vendors, both cloud and object storage on premise, that support Amazon's APIs and that we have certified with. So yeah, so S3 can cover probably 10 different vendors we've certified with, I think.
Excellent, thank you. The next question that came in was, for replication, is it possible to accomplish a sync and cleanup of a local SAN to an S3 bucket?
I think the answer is yes, but I don't quite follow the question. Do you, Matthew? Have you got?
So I guess if you've got a current CatDV system, I'm kind of making some assumptions here, but we'll roll with it. So if you've got an existing CatDV system and you've got some media that's on premise, but you'd like to start moving that into cloud, then I guess we've got a couple of different solutions for that. We've got our archive plugins, which we've had for a while, that support a number of different sort of cloud providers. So you can use those to start archiving your material to the cloud, or you could effectively use our new remote volumes functionality that we've introduced in the latest versions of Server and Worker, which would allow you to do file copies from your local storage to the remote volumes. But they're kind of two different sort of specific use cases, so it's probably worth understanding a bit more about the application. In terms of cleanup, I guess probably that's meaning sort of trying to save some space because the local storage is full. So I mean, that feels like an archive style workflow, but
yeah, but that is something that's becoming a bit of a sweet spot for CatDV. CatDV's often been seen as a front end to archive, great, and that archive historically maybe has been an LTO. But these days, with different tiers of online storage of varying speeds and costs, plus cloud, plus LTO, with different policies to move between them, and different policies to move out of, with things like Glacier and expedited restores or not, then CatDV as an asset management tool has a load more power than a lot of the storage systems on their own to be able to say, archive this when the project's marked as complete, or archive this when it's approved, or move it to this second tier of storage that's nearline when this project is marked as finished. And all of that can happen fairly seamlessly. And we do aim for the content almost to find the person that wants it, rather than them having to go find it, irrespective of whether the storage landscape might have 5 different tiers on it. You might have S3, you might have Glacier, maybe have Deep Archive, even just on the cloud side. You maybe want to have a bit of LTO as well because you want your local archive, and you might have certainly 1, if not 2 tiers of online. So, CatDV can manage all of that and set stuff either by policy or to manually enable people to just offload.
And that's the strength of the worker, isn't it, Dave? Is that we give you the tool to kind of build that business logic for your system. So rather than pushing you into a specific workflow, you can use the tool. I suppose that's a great plug for next week as well. That if you want to learn more about how to configure those workflows, then the worker is your friend there, really, because setting up those queries and structuring those sort of workflows is the key to kind of doing stuff when you want it to happen, rather than us just saying it always gets archived or
And I mean, and at the same time, so as we're talking, thinking about different aspects of that question, for those folks who have just run out of space on their SAM and then you panic because your team can't work, well, typically what people do is just file copy, move stuff to cloud. Well, you probably saw, if you were able to join us in our webinar a couple of weeks ago, we can ingest from cloud as well as being able to ingest from file-based storage as well. So whether or not CatDV has done the move, which we'd always encourage, but if it hasn't, and you've just manually moved a whole pile of stuff to the SAM, from the SAM to cloud storage, we can do a whole pile now to be able to index that so that we can help you to get organized, even though you may have made a very immediate decision just to offload storage to be able to free up your team to be able to work. So yeah, hopefully that's answered the question anyway.
Thank you. And we've got one last question that's come in. So you mentioned that Mastercat Alleycat can run a review and approval workflow, but can CatDV also work with somebody's existing review and approval tool?
Sure. So particularly given that we've stepped up our relationship with North Shore Automation, we counted up between our two organizations how many integrations we either had as product or that we'd done as specific integrations for a customer. And we got to more than 100. So when we say we think we are the best connected asset management platform in the business, that is genuine, you know, and I had to do a double take personally, and I had to see the list because I thought we haven't done 100 surely, but we have. So yeah, if you have other tools, then we're not precious. If there are things that you consider we don't do as well as other tools in the market, or we don't want to be best in the world at, then absolutely we can. We just did we've done one recently. So it depends on your chosen tooling. Do contact us and we can let you know how we integrate. But we've done one recently up in Canada for a massive organization that had that exact kind of requirement. So yes, we can do that. Talk to us. Kind of covered by our previous webinar again about customization, JavaScript APIs. You know, we are an API first organization. Most of these products we want to integrate with, or you want us to integrate with, have APIs. So that's kind of between us and our chums at North Shore and our tier one reseller partners and integrators, then we've got a huge pile of options.
It's worth reminding, I know you said at the beginning, Dave, but if you have missed one of the previous sessions, you know, specifically the training ones, and they are all available to watch again on the website, and we try and get them up as quick as we can, don't we?
We do, yeah.
Great, thanks, Dave. So that's all the questions we've had in today. If you have any other questions, please send them into sales@squarebox.com or book up using our You Can Book Me link. Otherwise, thank you all for taking time to join us, and we hope to see you again at one of our upcoming webinars in the next couple of weeks.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye-bye.
CatDV.